Hello, Wanderers. If I seem a little somber today, it is because today we are putting an end to something that has been many months in the making, and that is the Crusader Kings 3 roleplay series that began with Alexandros of Crete and ended with Caliph Ismael in the Star and the Sword series. This series was the biggest undertaking on our channel thus far. Many hours were spent editing those videos. There were over 60 episodes, and you guys watched them for hundreds of thousands of hours, actually. And the support for that series was truly insane. It really kept me going to keep creating videos, and it really was probably one of the biggest and best things that we've done on the channel thus far. And I was definitely overwhelmed by the amount of interest and excitement that you guys showed for the story of Alexandros, his heirs, and even the Zaydan dynasty later on. Unfortunately, with the arrival of the Legacy of Persia DLC, we have had to just make a decision, and I have decided to put that series to rest. The save file is technically still playable, but many of the features that come with the new DLC are no longer working, and any mods that we were using are going to go out of date, and things are just going to continue to break down as time goes along. So ultimately, I had to make the difficult decision not to play the next season of the Star and Sword series, but instead to put an end to this one and hopefully look forward to what is to come. Playing something in the Persia region with the new DLC is something that I think really excites me and hopefully will really excite you guys. I've got some interesting characters planned for that. And we will be doing something a little bit like what we did with this timeline, where we may jump between dynasties in different parts of the world after playing one or two or three characters in one, kind of switching over. I had a lot of fun with that in this last series, and I think it's going to be a staple of the channel to come. But with that said, I would like to kind of look back on this series, try to bring it some sort of closure. I didn't want to just leave you guys hanging. And so we're going to look back at the various characters we played, the stories that they have played, and kind of imagine what the future may hold. And if you stick around to the end of the video, there's a little surprise at the end that you may be curious to see. So with that being said, let's take a look back at the story thus far. And that story began with Alexandros of Crete, of the House of Argaeus. This character is a character that I have had in mind for a very long time. Actually, at the end of the first season of Clan Stierna, after Stirkar's death, I had the idea for playing a Hellenic character in kind of a similar manner to that of Stirkar, this roleplay series with like a really interesting character with an interesting backstory. And I like the idea of playing a Hellenic character and trying to recreate the conquests of Alexander, although, you know, things quickly go off the rail as they do in CK3. But that was an idea that I've had for a long time. And so when we finally got the opportunity to do that, I was very excited. Alexandros' story started with the death of his wife and unborn child at the hands of the evil emir Shu'aib on the island of Crete. He led that rebellion against them. He was just a peasant leader, but they said that he was blessed by Ares himself, and he ended up proving it, defeating the emir, going on to earn the respect of the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, swearing fealty to him and building the foundations of the dynasty that would go on to change the world. Towards the end of his life, Alexander did, or Alexandros, I should say, did end up starting what kind of became a little bit of a meme on the channel or within the series, and that is the curse. After sailing on a pilgrimage, I believe it was, to Alexandria, he made the decision to kill a seagull aboard the ship, which apparently was bad luck. And ever since that, all of the young male members of the Argaeus dynasty have tended towards, not all of them, but many of them have died at very young ages. Alexandros himself had some sons that died at young ages. He himself did as well. I don't think almost anybody lived past 55 in the male line, anyways, from that point onwards. So, and the curse would stick with us through many generations. But he did leave a legacy of conquest and of building the foundations, like I said, of the great dynasty to come. After Alexandros' death, his son Hippos came to the throne. Now, Hippos had an interesting story as well. Through a random event of CK3, early on in his childhood, I think he was maybe a teen at this time, him and his siblings all went to another ruler's court, and on the ride back via ship, they were attacked by pirates, or at least this is the story that we developed, because almost all of his siblings ended up getting some kinds of injuries, at least all the male siblings on the ship. And so we had this idea of Hippos and his younger brothers fighting off the pirates, protecting their sisters from these pirate invaders and fighting them off. This is where Hippos got his scars. He was injured for a long time. It looked like he might not even make it, but he did kind of end up overcoming that. He survived and took over from his father, but some of his siblings would succumb to the curse and die at young ages anyways. Now, it was under Hippos that Crete really started to thrive. He started conquering other lands and bringing new areas within the Eastern Roman Empire's sphere of influence, not only but as well as the direct influence of Crete, and really propelling the dynasty to some of the greatest heights in the court of the emperor. So he did a really good job of that. He also was the one who started to conquer the holy sites, I believe Carthage and some of those other areas started to fall under the sway of the Argaeus dynasty during the reign of Hippos. But it would be his son who really started to expand the religious side of things later on in his life. Now, that son was Odysseus. Odysseus took over from his father, who died during a campaign to take the city of Alexandria. And even at the young age, Odysseus was there when his armies did take the city from the Egyptians and brought it back under the Hellenic rule. Now, Odysseus was our Prince of Egypt series, which was probably one of the most fun seasons during this entire playthrough. He started off, he had a really promising start to his reign, like I mentioned, cocky, he was rich, he just, his family was up at the top of the rung of the power in the Eastern Roman Empire, just below the emperor himself and maybe some of the most powerful nobles. But we were quite strong despite being of that Hellenic religion. He would go on to try to conquer the rest of Egypt to some moderate success. But it was when he got smallpox and became disfigured from it that things would really start to break down. What had began as a promising reign ended with him descending into madness. Now, the madness did come and go, and during that time, later on in his life, he was able to reform the religion. Now, we created a new religion that was kind of a hybrid between the Hellenic religion and then incorporating some elements of Christianity. We essentially made a religion that considered the Abrahamic God to be one of the gods, actually the top god of this new religion, who had supplanted Zeus, and his son Jesus was essentially a Hercules type demigod figure. And bringing in and incorporating these elements helped the religion and the people following it integrate with the empire. I believe it was also during Odysseus's reign that he became a paragon, which would essentially that was the kind of acknowledgement that the dynasty had descended from the god Ares, and that their blood, they had the blood of the gods in them. And that would pass down through all of his descendants later on. So anyone who was a descendant of Alexandros, and then more specifically Odysseus, would get that trait, that consecrated blood trait, and that would spread far throughout the world in the centuries to come. Unfortunately for Odysseus, he was assassinated by some of the former rulers of Egypt, and thus his son Ptolemy would end up taking the throne. Now, Ptolemy looked like he was going to go off to a good start. He got a marriage alliance with the daughter of or the granddaughter, I believe, of the emperor at the time. And through a series of circumstances, that daughter ended up being the heir to the Eastern Roman Empire. So through Ptolemy, his children would end up inheriting the empire. Unfortunately, Ptolemy did die an untimely death at a very young age. I believe he was only in his 40s when he died. And so that throne would pass to his very young daughter, Ariadne. Now, Ariadne took the throne, as I mentioned, at a very young age. I think she was only 14. And she came to the throne at a time of great troubles. There was a civil war. Her mother ended up taking the throne of the Eastern Roman Empire, becoming the empress, but was usurped by one of the other powerful nobles. So, and unfortunately passed away. So it was up to Ariadne to retake the empire, and she did so. Now, she was raised in a military family, in a warlike family. She was raised to believe that she was descended from the Greek god of war, Ares himself. And, in this Hellenic religion, they did not really discern between men and women when it came to these military educations, at least among the higher nobility and those of House Argaeus. And so she had a mind for strategy, and she would lead her armies to great victories, including retaking the empire. And she did not stop there. She would go on to conquer many, many lands, and indeed brought all of Italy within the realm of Argaeus and the Eastern Roman Empire. She didn't even stop there, though, because she would go and cast down the Pope, not only driving the Papal States essentially to ruin, but also crucifying the Pope himself and sending shockwaves through the Catholic world that would really echo for many, many generations to come. Would they ever fully recover? That's hard to say, but with the death of the Pope, things really did change during that time. It was after the conquest of Italy and the casting down of the Pope that she essentially could be claimed as the true successor to the Roman Empire. And I think in that moment, she surpassed even Alexandros as the greatest of the Argaeus rulers. I think there can be no doubt that although Alexandros and, some of her previous family members were powerful and did great things, I think it has to be acknowledged that Ariadne was the one who really fulfilled the destiny that would belong to House Argaeus. Unfortunately, it was not a destiny that would last many generations beyond this powerful figure herself, but it would echo out through time, and the ramifications of her actions would certainly play a big role in the timeline to come. Now, after Ariadne's death, we did decide to switch gears, and this was the first time we've done this on the channel, switching to a different dynasty but on the same playthrough. We ended up waiting 60 years in time and then taking back over as Ismael of House Zaydan. Now, Ismael was located in the Tangiers region. He was from a family that used to rule the Maghreb. They kind of had like a pretty great lineage, and they had fallen on hard times. They were a shadow of what they once were. But Ismael was an interesting character. He was a warrior sculler, and this offered a unique opportunity to try to do a tall campaign rather than a wide one. We haven't really played tall on the channel before, and so I was really excited to try this. We kept our conquests fairly secluded to one specific region, the northern Maghreb, and we ended up building up the city of Fez to truly, truly great heights. Now, it took almost the entire lifetime of Ismael, but we ended up fulfilling all of his goals. We reformed and created a new religion. We redeveloped the culture and created this Moroccan culture, which was a fusion of the local people to the Maghreb and also the Andalusians, which was where Ismael was raised in the court of the Umayyads. And not only that, but building up the city of Fez to build the great university there and essentially making it the greatest city in North Africa, perhaps other than Alexandria in Egypt. But Ismael did build that, and he built a strong dynasty, a strong family-oriented dynasty. He had 4 sons, and they were all great characters, and there was a lot of opportunities to take over as them. We ended up leaving that to a vote, and we decided that Christopher would be his heir. And there was the potential of playing that second season as Christopher, but unfortunately, as mentioned, that won't be the case. And so that brings us to the present moment. And like I said, unfortunately, we will be putting this save file to rest. We won't really truly know what could have happened if we had continued playing on in the reign of Christopher and potential other dynasties. But I think we can make some inferences. Now, I imagine that the Zaydan dynasty, if we were playing it under our rule, obviously we would be able to raise it to great heights. But I think historically speaking, it would be very difficult for the Zaydans to really grow their power and retain the power that they had. They've got powerful Umayyads to the north, and even though there is some relations there, that might not last forever, and there would definitely be some tensions there with these 2 rivals on the other side of the Strait of Gibraltar. As for the Argaeus dynasty, I also don't really necessarily see them rising back up to the heights that they were before. Maybe if a very powerful member of the dynasty emerged, they could. But I imagine that the kind of fracturing that we saw in the wake of the dissolution of the Roman Empire would remain. Now, Greece and Anatolia and Italy might form into their own kingdoms and would probably have Argaeus descendants ruling them. But yes, I don't really imagine that there would be another reforming of the Roman Empire, no matter how much time had passed. Historically speaking, if we played one of the characters, we could probably easily do it. But I think between the 2 of those, I could imagine House Zaydan going on for a while longer, but I feel like they would probably fade away after some time. Argaeus would continue on strong through its various cadet dynasties, probably forming many kingdoms, and the descendants of Alexandros would go on to great things. How that would shape the world, I mean, we would be looking at a completely different world now if the events of this timeline had come to place. And it would be a very interesting thought experiment. But we're not necessarily going to go down that rabbit hole. You can if you would like. And I'm curious, definitely leave a comment of how you think things would play out in the wake of the events from this timeline. But that is how we are going to bring things to a close, bring things to an end. Now, I did promise you something at the end of this video if you did watch, and that will be coming up shortly. But if you have enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure to like this video. There will be another series coming, as I mentioned, the Legacy of Persia DLC. I am excited to play it, and I am excited for you to see what comes next on the channel. As always, Wanderers, thank you for watching, and now for your little bit of bonus footage.